So there was this one time I opened up a closet door and a skeleton attacked me.
It's macabre.
Laplace'sの間.
Also known as Laplace'S Demon, is a Japanese dungeon crawler released for the PC-88 in 1987. Developed by Hummingbird Soft and launched as the first entry into the Ghost Hunter franchise, a multimedia horror project that included novels, tabletop RPGs, and video games. The head of this project being Hitoshi Yasuda under his company Group SME. Yasuda is an elder nerd who spent the majority of his life translating British and American sci-fi novels into Japanese, and writing for table and video games. He's also done a lot of work for Record of Lodos War, if that rings any bells for you. Laplace's Demon received various ports and revisions over the following 8 years with Yasuda as writer and supervisor, culminating in the game's 1995 Super Famicom version, which we'll be looking at today. It never got an official English release, but received a fan translation by the ever-reliable Aeon Genesis. This one has a much more standard 90s JRPG construction while trying to remain true to its tabletop roots. This is the first time I went through a game blind for this channel, and I was a little worried it would end up being mediocre or boring, but I was relieved to find this is a pretty interesting little journey. I will now show it to you through the classic bedtime story walkthrough format. Rest assured it does not disappoint.
Welcome to
Waruiko.
It's great to be with you on the internet. We've worked very hard to make our homepage your homepage.
The year is 1924. The place is Newcomb, Massachusetts. A mysterious young man arrives in town and heads for Weathertop Hall, an abandoned mansion once owned by the eccentric Weathertop family. Sometime later, 3 children go missing while exploring said mansion, wanting to see if it was really haunted like the rumor said. 2 of them weren't missing for long. Their mutilated corpses were discovered soon after. The 3rd child, a girl named Amy, seemingly vanished without a trace. One long and fruitless investigation later, the authorities simply washed their hands of it and sealed up the old mansion. This incident caught everyone's attention and has brought many weird, nosy assholes to Newcomb, including you. You start by picking between body type A and B, then you pick a class and give yourself a cool name. We've got 5 classes here: Detective, Journalist, Scientist, Medium, and Dabbler. Detectives are the straight damage dealers who can shoot everything to death so long as you don't forget to buy ammo. We'll go with that one. One detail I immediately love is that your reason for coming to Newcomb changes depending on what class your character is. The detective just wants to solve the case and bring peace to the town, while the journalist wants their big scoop, and the medium sees all of this as an opportunity to better understand and control their psychic powers. You can really see those tabletop bones poking through every now and then. Anyway, here we are. Let's go meet the locals. The local speakeasy is stuffed with outsiders like us, all of them itching to head into Weathertop Hall. Our first buddy is Lamont Blackwood, a man fascinated by the occult who came to Newcomb in order to investigate any possible otherworldly connections to the case. He's a dabbler, which means he gets access to low-level spells while also being able to physically attack enemies with any weapon. He can only gain new spells by reading certain books on the mythos scattered throughout the game world. These books have some really good flavor text describing the absorption of eldritch knowledge as something forbidden and traumatic. The process is mentally taxing, often physically painful, causing characters to become ill and experience hallucinations. It's a fantastic bit of atmosphere in an otherwise rather cartoony game. Our second party member is Vincent Hoffman, a scientist who really wants to use his fancy new spirit machine to murder some ghosts. The scientist is an interesting class. They need batteries for their machine to work, which I somehow missed during my test run of this game, making Otacon over here absolutely useless. But once you do it properly, you realize scientists are very useful during the early game. They start with 2 machine attacks, one for hurting enemies and the other for draining their MP. Their attacks also appear to have 100% accuracy, which really comes in handy given this game's insanely high miss rate during battles. Vincent was quite an asset for me early on, but became totally useless as I made decent progress. You see, scientists learn new moves by upgrading their machines with parts you find around the game world. They seem to have pretty obtuse requirements, like getting a hidden merchant to sell you holy oil so you can burn it on a random statue. I did not find a single one of these during my playthrough, so poor Vince remained moveless until he was benched barely halfway through the game. I imagine scientists could become very powerful if you bothered to find all the parts though. The third person we meet is Alec Quinn, a detective tasked with investigating Amy's disappearance. He mentions Amy's mother is right over there and she offers us a reward of $1,000 if we're capable of finding her daughter. In 1924 money, that's probably enough to buy a mansion, one that hopefully isn't full of skeletons. I'm already a detective, so having Alec in my party was kind of awkward, as we were both taking from the same ammo pool. This happens with most classes. 2 scientists in your party will use twice as many batteries, and 2 journalists use twice as many film rolls. And speaking of which, Morgan Dillon is a journalist who wants to be the first to break the news in Weathertop Hall. Journalists can take photos of enemies during battle and sell them at the nearby hotel for money. This is the only way of making money in the game aside from selling equipment or items. I never once made Morgan attack the entire game. I just let this woman play Dead Rising in the background and make me thousands of dollars by selling grainy Polaroids of rotting corpses and possessed furniture. The pictures have a chance of being clear, blurry, or too dark to make out. Different enemies give you different amounts of money. Clear pictures give you the full payout, blurry pictures give you half, and dark pictures give you nothing. Our last party member for now is Dirk August, an exorcist medium who came to cleanse Weathertop Hall of evil. Mediums are entirely magic-based and have a huge arsenal of spells compared to dabblers. There's a lot of equipment and armor they can't use, so they're forced to rely on their powers. They cannot learn from the Mythos books, but have a separate category of spells that I think increases as they level up. Certain enemies only get hurt by psychic damage, so it's a good idea to have him or Lamont around. And now that we have our party assembled, let's hit the town. We've got all the RPG essentials here. A hotel where you can save and rest your party. A library that lets you read files you've acquired. A classic small-town psychic training facility where you can learn new skills, a general store that sells you valuable items, and a surprisingly helpful fortune teller that will tell you exactly where to go every time you get stuck, which will be constantly. Now that we've gotten used to our surroundings, it's time to head into Weathertop Hall and solve the mystery and find the child. Singular, because the other kids are already dead. The door to safety is shut, and there's no turning back. Your first trip into the hall is quite memorable. There's no set objective, you just fuck around until you find clues and key items. Within seconds, you will encounter the game's colorful enemy roster, which is almost entirely composed of Spirit Halloween decorations. You've got spiders, zombies, mummies, vampires, rats, bats, killing turtles, people, women, ghosts, killer dolls, killer doors, killer beds. I'm shocked they had the restraint not to include any evil clowns or cackling witches. The enemies do get into more familiar RPG territory later on, but it's hard to shake off how Scooby-Doo your first impressions are. The game literally has a zoinks mechanic where examining random objects can lead to scary stuff happening, making your party shudder in terror and lose MP. Enemies have a random chance to sneak up on you, scaring the shit out of your party and giving them the first turn. There are plenty of ridiculous joke moments like the closet thing from earlier, or this event where a piano plays itself. One of the first things you do here is talk to a ghost butler that tells you to talk to a living painting that gives you the location of a secret key in a chest. When a party member dies, their sprite turns into a comical body bag that still follows you around until you revive them at the hospital. When they get confused, their sprite spins around in the overworld. My point here is that this isn't the cruelest, most painful, obscure Japan-only psychological horror game you've never heard of and shouldn't play that broke me and shot my dog. That's secretly about radical empathy and being a decent human being and having a normal one. It has some edgy and esoteric inspirations, and they're executed well enough to take seriously, but Laplace'S Demon is overall a very classic, light-hearted RPG adventure with evil wizards and loyal knights that happens to flirt with cosmic horror every now and then, and the game's charm comes from that unlikely mixture. You already know what it plays like and what you do in it. It's very short, Even a 100% playthrough should be less than 10 hours long. It's also very easy so long as you put some minor effort into leveling your characters and buying the right equipment. After some wandering around, you find a book detailing the history of the Weathertop family. They moved here from Salem following its infamous witch hunts in the 1600s. The family carries with it a tradition of research into the mythos. The fact that Benedict caused this event must be because it's in his blood. In the same room we have a painting of the patriarch Richard Weathertop. In a nearby servant's room we find the butler I mentioned earlier. Woe has befallen our hall ever since Master Benedict dabbled in math's most dark. We are bound to this hall as lost souls. Please save us. Also, the spirit of Master Benedict's father resides in a painting in the drawing room. He knows far more about the curse than I, so please speak to him. He gives the key to Benedict's chambers and then poofs out of existence. Let's give old Richard a visit and see what's up. Benedict's hubris brought a curse upon this hall. All its residents, my wife and the servants, are its victims. My wife is all I have. In my room, there's a key. Take it and go to the chapel. Please lift the curse from this house. You are the only ones I can ask. Well, that mysterious young man from the opening wasn't mysterious for very long. You can actually leave the hall whenever you want and return to Newcomb to heal your party and stock up. So, let's do that. The town NPCs also get new dialogue every now and then. Benedict Weathertop is a master of magic and math. Ever since his mother died, Benedict has mourned. This investigation has barely started and we already have a name and a possible motive. I'd say we're doing pretty well, so why don't we take a history break? There are 5 versions of Laplace's Demon. We're going through the Super Famicom version, as I've already said, but I think it's important to highlight its earlier iterations and see how it changed with time. The first one came out for the PC-88 in 1987. I can't play any of these as I don't know Japanese and don't want to go through the trouble of emulating these old PC games again. I already did it once so I could get all the achievements for 177. I can only offer you a very surface level look, but I do like what I see. Aside from Tam, Shiro, Dawn, and Durb looking a little goofy, the game's presentation is really strong right out the gate. I really love how Weathertop Hall is depicted in this version, the super dithered and fuzzy graphics, the dark blue color palette. It feels genuinely haunted and otherworldly. The sudden shift to black and white for what I assume is the basement is equally striking. The music has that sharp, rough quality of most 80s games. The basement's ambient noises sound particularly freakish. It's really cool to look at this and recognize some elements and motifs that remained intact all the way into the 1995 version. And this is footage from the game's MSX port released 2 years later in 1989. It looks virtually identical to the PC-88 version, so there's not that much to say about it. It is nice to see they've discovered the color red though. Next up is the Sharp X6800 version from 1990, which introduces the new feature of title screen jump scares. In this one, you seem to build your entire party from scratch, giving them all names, birthdays, and classes. You can even pick from these very cute and charming old-school portraits for them. It's great to see Newcomb from a first-person view, and the speakeasy is lively as ever. It's even got a poker minigame you can play and bet all your ghost photo money on. The town's shopkeepers get their own designs here too. The doctor, the general store, the fortune teller, and the librarian all drawn with lots of personality. You seem to save the game at a church in this version instead of a hotel, and I'm not really sure why. Overall, the town is much more detailed in this version instead of just being an overhead map. And once you head into Weathertop Hall, you'll find it has the same eerie blue glow from the first version. The mansion itself looks like a ghost. Even the enemy designs get a little more interesting here, with this weirdly realistic bat and this giant spider with an evil face on its butt. This is the PC Engine CT port of Laplace's Demon, released in 1993. Check this out. There's voice acting. There's an animated opening cutscene showing Benedict's arrival at Newcomb. There's a spooky title screen animation followed by shots both outside and inside of Weathertop Hall. You think this presentation alone would blow every other port out of the water, but I think the Sharp X86 version actually looks better overall. Sure, the first impressions are incredible on this one, but every other visual element kind of falls short. You seemingly start at the hotel already with a full party, but none of them have portraits. We get a bird's eye view of the city, and I really do prefer the previous first-person view over this. I like how distant and imposing the hall looks, though, and I appreciate the second screen asking you if you really want to enter or not. Within the hall, we get a more standard color palette instead of the ghostly blue from earlier, but what really stands out in this version is the sound design. There is no music outside of battles. All sound effects have this creepy static hum that plays constantly. This goes a long way in making the place feel tense and ominous. So while I think the PC Engine CD port ends up somewhat aesthetically disappointing, it still seems pretty fascinating on its own. All of these are pretty cool, honestly. It was very satisfying to build the timeline in my head and watch how all these ideas grew and eventually coalesced into the Super Famicom version. Some compromises were clearly made to make it fit better on console, but I don't think they did a bad job at all. It's the final evolution of a form Hummingbird had been refining for nearly a decade at that point. Real fear in 2D achieved through dual-sided control. By converting the disorienting 3D elements into a clear 2D map, we've solved the issue of losing your current position, yet the terror of taking the next step is vividly recreated with advanced spot rendering technology. Call out the online map anytime with the Y button. Eliminate stress, a faithful adaptation of the TRPG system. Supervised by Mr. Shirakawa, the original designer of the tabletop Ghost Hunter series. Core features such as fear checks and the skill system have been faithfully reproduced. Plus, unique Super Famicom features like special attacks have been added, making this a must-play title that will satisfy even die-hard fans. The Super Famicom version of Laplace'S Demon is a PC dungeon crawler for hardcore tabletop nerds getting folded into a 1995 console RPG format, and there's some noticeable friction between the two styles. There's an effort to make the game feel more immersive by trying to blend gameplay and story together. For example, I am requested to find a man named Luis Martin inside Weathertop Hall and bring him back if possible. After some searching, I find a corpse wearing a pendant inscribed with the initials LM. So we bag the body and drag him back into town. Martin is dead. No. One less thing to do then. He needs a proper burial. Deserves that much. Can you take his body to the cemetery? Oh shit, $100 and a new camera. Hey, does anyone want to play some poker? This is what the game considers a side quest. You're not getting 5 wolf belts from the cave goblins for the town merchant. You're basically an undertaker snatching up people's dead bodies so you can reunite them with their crying families, while this jaunty-ass music plays in the background. Believe it or not, this kind of thing is actually the best way to gain experience in this game. Not through fighting. You're not supposed to play this like Dragon Quest. The focus is on investigating and surviving, fighting hidden events and completing quests, while the combat feels more like a bump in the road. Grinding seems discouraged unless you're trying to make some cash with Morgan, but we'll get to that later. The level cap in this game is 10, which I think makes the devs' intentions pretty clear. It's quality over quantity, trying to contextualize generic RPG interactions and make them meaningful. The keyword here is trying, of course. Unfortunately, the game doesn't really commit to its best ideas, and as a result, the bulk of the game is still a lot of dull, obligatory RPG stuff. For starters, this game has a random encounter rate on par with fucking Nocturne. I've had encounters happen 2 tiles apart from each other. I've had them trigger whenever I walk through doors or go downstairs. One time, the game sent me to an encounter tile after a cutscene, and it triggered as soon as the dialogue stopped. Sometimes encounters will trigger when you examine something or talk to someone. Something will jump out at your party, or prison guards will hear your chat and break in to kill you. I have to wonder what's the point of trying to give these specific encounters some justification, when I can just walk forward for 3 seconds and fight another pack of enemies. What, were they hiding a way to finish the job? I understand none of this is new for retro RPGs, especially the kind this one descends from. and it's probably not too irritating if you're familiar with the genre, but what really drove it over the line for me was the equally insane miss rate. In every fight, there's a roughly 50% chance of all characters, enemies included, to miss every one of their attacks, and it's the same for escaping battles. Now imagine you're running around these huge dungeons trying to figure out what to do, based on little to no information, and getting 3 random encounters in a row, all of them dragged out over 2 to 3 minutes because everyone's doing a wacky slapstick routine instead of killing each other. It becomes too obnoxious to ignore at this point, even if it doesn't ruin the game, but it's clearly doing itself a disservice here. I do enjoy certain things about the combat. For example, I love how the area music keeps playing once you find an enemy, only switching to the battle theme if you decide to fight them. It's like there's a period where the party is scared and wondering what to do next, before they gather enough courage to go beat some ass. Every character also has a special meter that goes up as you fight. I very much enjoy the detective and the journalist special attacks, which involve just punching the enemy really hard and blinding them with your camera flash. You need to gather maps for every floor of the game's dungeons, and on top of that, you need to buy a compass at the general store to actually see yourself in the map. It's very cool. The fucked up accuracy I think was a deliberate choice meant to convey danger and desperation. You're a bunch of uncoordinated normies going up against supernatural horrors and barely scraping by. I like this idea, but once again it kind of falls apart when you have so many fights happening so often. All novelty disappears very quickly. Anyway, I'm done complaining for now. Benedict is our man, and we've got to track him down. Let's head back into the hall and see what we can find out. As instructed, we head into Richard's room and find a copper key hidden in a drawer. As we keep exploring the second floor, we find ourselves in the library. A black shadow emanates from the book's pages. We'll find only death in this hall. Beware the Dimension's curse. The shadow disappeared, leaving behind an eerie laugh. Well, alright. Anything else? There's some salt, and a bunch of books fall on our head. Oh wait, here we go. Books on the occult, as well as books on math and sciences. So many modern texts on chance and probability here, but why? Many entries are scrawled on the margins, most about something called Laplace's demon. If you didn't know, Laplace's demon is an actual theory on determinism published by Pierre-Simon Laplace in 1814. It imagines an all-knowing intellect that, if it knew the precise location and momentum of every atom in the universe at a given time, could predict the future and retrodict the past with perfect accuracy, since everything moves along a predetermined path. Keep that in mind. We run outside and use Richard's copper key to open the doors to the chapel, but there's some kind of evil presence in there that damages the party with every step they take, with added random encounters of course. Before I examine the altar and assess to offer the holy words, and then I die. Heading back into the hall, we come across a garden area that leads to a supernaturally locked door in the second floor. Let's go back around and actually head into Benedict's room like the butler wanted us to, and go through his diary. A hastily scrawled memo is there in the drawer. It's written in small, tense characters, apparently Benedict's handwriting. The ceremony brought forth an unimaginable effect. It didn't do anything for my mother's revival, but a glorious new world opened up before my very eyes. I'm going to the mysterious castle which is brimming with magic. I discover a hidden door behind a bookcase. Going down, we reach the cold, grey basement of Weathertop Hall and the first real change of scenery in the game. I'm a big fan of the earthboundy background music here. We then fight the land crawler, which is something of a mini-boss. He's this gross-looking parasitic worm. Feels more like something out of Shadow Hearts or Cool Delca, which I definitely appreciate. Fighting him was like fighting everything else in the game. I pressed attack for around 2 minutes. I find a girl's red shoe on the floor and then run back upstairs to buy a Bible from the grocery store, which I could place down in the chapel altar, which revealed yet another hidden door, leading us to a graveyard. Within, we find graves for Richard Weathertop, Janet Weathertop, and James Weathertop I, Benedict's father, mother, and possibly grandfather. Using a shovel on Janet's grave, we dig up the memento ring. Going back up to the second floor, I find silver bullets on a desk. Said desk then flies into us, damaging everyone in the party. I've had enough of being harassed by furniture at this point, so I went back to the magic door from earlier and used the ring to unlock it. This is Janet's room. There's a dead woman sleeping soundly in bed. Examining the corpse triggers a fight against 2 banshees, which was probably one of the toughest fights in the game for me. They count as ghostly enemies, so they can only be hurt by magic or by draining their MP. I am Janet, Benedict's mother, and I thank you for driving out the evil here. My son used forbidden maths in trying to twist time and return me back to life, and those dark equations wrought upon us all a most terrible tragedy and woe. Benedict has fallen into another world from the elder sign in the study. I beg, return my son to me. Oh yeah, if you're wondering what an elder sign is, it's these pentagram-looking things. There's 5 of them scattered around the mansion. I then spent the next half an hour bumping into walls, until I discovered another helpful ghost. The bell of this hall can purify evil. Please ring it and free us. But the door to the bell is sealed by the power of the 4 elder signs. An evil spirit seals the power of the bell itself. Destroying the elder signs will open the door, but only the lady of the house knows the method of restoring the bell. Ring it and let its sound cleanse the curse on us. Going back to Janet, her spirit begs us to bury her body in the graveyard. Doing so gives us 1000 experience and the ability to finally destroy those elder signs. My first was in this weird ivy-covered room in the 2nd floor. 2 man plants were guarding it, and fighting them made Morgan go insane and then take a picture of herself. Good to see nothing's changed in 100 years. After the fight, I unsealed the elder sign, and then noticed Lamont is poisoned. And because this game is very strange, the poison takes 1 HP away for every tile you step on, meaning our resident ugly bastard here barely made it out the room before dying. Before that happens, let's examine this flower. There's a strange flower beneath the other plants in this room. A vision manifested itself before me. A shadowy man clasping a bloody dagger muttering. He appears to be praying to an elder sign. His invocation begins and then ends with a demand for his mother's resurrection. After a brief detour to revive Lamont, we go tackle the elder signs in the basement. One went down without a hitch and then we fucked around with ghosts again. A small crying child entered via a secret passageway. In the very same room in which Master Benedict disappeared. Check the study. Oh yeah, that's Amy, the girl we're supposed to find. Remember her? We also did find a lost shoe in the basement earlier. It's clear she's also gone to whatever castle Benedict was talking about. The next sign is nearby and it contains an invincible flame spirit. Well, almost invincible. Remember those salts we found in the library earlier? Using them here immediately ends the fight. No victory message or experience gained. It just cuts abruptly to the normal game. It's almost funny how sudden it is. Searching through a creepy morgue, we find a silver key, and a disembodied voice begins to speak out of nowhere. I'm having strange episodes where I lose consciousness. While out, even if only for a moment, I experience odd visions of a fantasy world. In it, there's a castle from the Middle Ages, right in the middle of a forest. I thought I saw the face of Benedict Weathertop in one of the windows. Odd. Using the silver key reveals a staircase leading back up to the 1st floor, the shortcut out into the main hall. The last elder sign we need to unseal is here, but the room leading to it is blocked by water. The basement actually has a room identical to this, and once we turn the fountain on, it drains all the water from the 1st floor, clearing a path for us. We go back up, unseal the last sign, and finally unlock a door in the 2nd floor, leading us to the Holy Bell. I see the spirits of Benedict's parents appear from the darkness. We have our freedom and your eternal debt. Thank you so much, but the true cause of the anomalies remains still. Cross between worlds to the hall in the other dimension and bring back our son. Unless he returns, there will be disaster upon our world. We pray for your success. The spirit couple vanishes from my gaze. Oh, level up, hell yeah. I know there was a lot of stuff, and I don't blame you for not getting all of it. So before we head into the second half of the game with the castle, let's take another break. Laplace'S Demon was not the only video game in the Ghost Hunter franchise. I was able to find 2 others. For now, I'd like to briefly talk about Kurokishi no Kamen, released in 1994 for the 3DO. Once again written by Hitoshi Yasuda. It's set in London during 1930 and concerns the Guildford estate, a supposedly haunted manor whose occupants were brutally murdered a few decades prior, so a familiar team steps in to investigate. The detective Alec Quinn, the journalist Morgan Dillon, the scientist Vincent Hoffman, and another guy I can talk about because he hasn't shown up in Laplace yet. I don't think the story is actually connected to the other game in any meaningful way. It seems to me like they're just putting the same cast in a variety of spooky scenarios, which is fine by me. I also found this very adorable image in a magazine ad for the game. As far as I can tell, Kurokishi plays just like Laplace but with less RPG emphasis. There's no level ups or skills. Instead, the game dives headfirst into awkward early FMV point-and-click stuff. The first thing the gang does is stumble upon the mansion owner's ghost hanging from a noose. I didn't realize that's what he was doing at first, so I thought he was just swaying back and forth to try and seem more ghosty and ethereal. I love the graphics here. They're extremely Spencer Mansion. You know what these rooms are supposed to look like, but there's always something unnaturally sparse and artificial about the way they're rendered. It looks great. I can't imagine a better location for a game like this. Jesus Christ, even in this game they're scared of everything. Here we are in the castle basement. There's new enemies and new background music finally. Of course I run around and get my ass kicked repeatedly. Unlike Weathertop Hall, the castle has actual living human servants, but they just run away from me. We beat another living doll up and take her heart as a trophy. I also find this dingy cave torture dungeon area, which finally leads me to an evil wizard named Moldiv. Judging from your clothes, you must be friends of Benedict. Come to save him, have you? Foolish. You've walked right into your captor's hands, and soon you'll be tortured to death. Anyway... I misjudged you. Tell Benedict. Tell him that Laplace'S demon is beyond anyone's power to control. Even Laplace himself is under its thrall. Perhaps even now I am serving its ends. Always ever a piece on the board. I looked on objectively as Moldiv slowly bled out. Okay. We actually find a Crimson Diary later in the game that better explains what's going on here. It's Benedict's writing. It talks of him being taken in by Moldiv the wizard and living in the castle while learning many arcane arts and sciences. One day, Louvain told him of a certain demon that the owner of the castle, Laplace, controlled. As he began to fathom the power of Laplace's demon, it became his obsession, and so he plotted to take that power for himself. But Kenichiro chasing him from Newcomb spoiled everything for him, and so Benedict's failure led to his capture by Laplace. The end? Two new characters have entered the picture, Louvain and Kenichiro. We'll meet one of them pretty soon. What do you get when you cross a water buffalo, a giraffe, and a boar? I don't know, but it does drop a silver crucifix upon death. Going back to the cave, we can get a key from a guard which unlocks a nearby cell block. The first cell holds an old wizard by the name of Adolf. Moldiv caught me in one of his magical traps. He's been manipulating Master Laplace ever since he arrived. I plan to slay Moldiv in order to free my lord from his villainous clutches. Please join me now in defeating him. Except we've already killed him 10 minutes ago, so he spends all his time in our party mumbling about Moldiv like a confused old man. Our next cellmate is close by. A tall, gallant man is standing here. He bears a knightly countenance. I am Sir Bayard, servant to the Lady Cassandra and a knight of Laplace Castle. I seek a man named Kenichiro. If you have seen him, you must tell me. I shall stay at Lady Cassandra's side for now. There are 2 other prisoners you can find here and recruit, both of whom have their own unique attacks and events, but I completely missed them because I am bad at my job. We do find another story character though. The body of an Oriental man is here. He has been beaten up and is covered in blood. He was probably killed by torture. Suddenly, his spirit burst out of his body and cried out to me passionately. People who came from the American town of Newcomb, am I correct? I am Kenichiro Kusakabe. I sought to thwart Benedict, but I was captured and then tortured to death. Benedict's plan is to take control of the king's demon and revive his dead mother. That is a foolish act. He must be captured and his plan stopped, even if it means killing him. I may have means to assist you, if you can return here with a vial of holy water. Oh, okay, let me just use the Satan portal to hop between dimensions so I can head back into town and then buy some holy water at the general store. Upon my return, I am treated to another dementia episode from Adolf and then run back to Kenichiro. Something strange happened when I anointed the body with holy water. Wounds all over the beaten corpse began closing up as if by magic. Kenichiro, he sure seems to be an excellent wielder of magic. I guess I'll return to my room northeast from now. You should come by later. And just like that, Adolf leaves our party, never to be seen again. We go back to Newcomb with Kenichiro in tow and leave him at the hospital to recover. Here's a fun thing I discovered. I mentioned earlier that you're tasked with recovering dead bodies from Weathertop Hall and bringing them into town. Well, it turns out that if you reach the 2nd floor quickly enough, you can actually find a survivor and rescue him, as you can see from my test run here. He's called Gordon, and if you visit him in the hospital, he basically lays out the entire first half of the game for you. He mentions the Elder Signs, the basement's hidden rooms, and Benedict's disappearance. I don't think this actually lets you skip any sequences, but it's a nice way to get some good information early. Most importantly, he also mentions Kenichiro snooping around the hall and the notebook he left behind. which you can take for yourself in the library. It's treated as a key item. You can't read it like every memo in the game, which confused me. I imagine you're supposed to hand Kenichiro his notebook whenever you get him in the hospital, and maybe it unlocks some hidden event or a new move for him. It shall remain a mystery, unfortunately. A pleasant-looking woman with a careworn expression stares skyward. The lake waters have all become dark and murky. Every day I feel myself growing stranger. Can I ever reclaim those carefree days of my youth, or are they gone forever? Oh no, I ran into an ugly monster. There's a big fat bald guy just sitting there and staring at me. How the castle in this game works is that every floor is more or less a self-contained puzzle box with its own secrets and battles. There is a big exception here, and that's floors 2 and 3. I failed to get footage of almost the entire first floor and around half of the second floor, and I have absolutely no excuse for that. Basically, half the second floor is a teleport maze, where going through a mirror will send you to the opposite side of the map with an identical layout. You have to go through them until you reach the map's upper half, which has an elder sign you can use to teleport back to safety, in the room with an old sage that wants an item called golden water which you can get from the labyrinth. But what troubles Master Laplace concerns me more. From when Benedict arrived, His Majesty has been in a murderous fugue. And then he gives us a severed hand so we can head to the nearby indoor forest area and somehow use it as a bridge, so we can reach the Griffin's lair and then kill it for an orthodox chalice and a bunch of bonus treasure. Oh, by the way, Sir Bayard is accompanying us for this part of the game. He's a nice man, pretty strong physical attacks, good to have around. The third floor is where I was subjected to one of the worst streaks of bad luck and gamer incompetence I've experienced in a very long time.
As for what happened?
It's a bunch of tiny islands that you have to reach by boat. There's an entire side quest on the second floor about the ghost of an oarsman, and how you bury his body and gain access to the bow statue item. Except I just walked in and picked it up before all of that, not knowing it was tied to a quest. So when I went to visit the ghost, he had nothing to say to me. The bow statue lets you use the boat and move in 5 different directions, which is not enough to get to where you need to go on this floor. You need another compass to properly control the boat and take it where you want. There's a vendor on the 3rd floor who sells it, but his shop only unlocks once your fast talk skill is at level 6. The skill lets you talk to certain NPCs who would otherwise be silent. It only has any real use on this floor and then nowhere else in the game. So why would you put critical story items behind a shop that's only unlocked through this skill? And that's not even the worst part. I went to look up some walkthrough from 2006 and they kept referring to the old compass. So the old brass compass, right? Like the one I bought to use the map? Well, no. It turns out I'm using an updated translation from 2018 with fancier language, so what I was really looking for was the vendor's antique compass all along. I sure wish I'd realized that earlier instead of spending an hour fucking around in SeaWorld. And of course, immediately after taking full control of the boat, I got into a bunch of sloppy random battles with turtles and squids and 3 of my party members died. And once I ran away from another battle, the game freaked the fuck out and my boat sprite glitched out and froze in place. I guess it doesn't like having to render 3 body bag sprites on the boat at the same time, so I floated around the map for a while before getting finally finished off by another pack of turtles. Now that I've properly conveyed my aquatic agonies to you, let's actually check out the 3rd floor. I should mention I actually swapped Vincent out for Kenichiro at this point in the game. It's sad, but it had to be done since I couldn't upgrade his machine at all. It's fine though, I'm sure he gets to join the army and help develop mustard gas or something. Kenichiro is a medium, the only one I came across in my first playthrough, and he's kind of ridiculous. Not only does he have a huge roster of support and healing spells at his disposal, but he has an entire second category of deist attack spells available only to him. He's got like 3 different spells just for skull-fucking the ghost enemies. This guy is basically the game's real protagonist. He gets his own illustration, his own backstory and motivations. The only thing I don't understand is why some random Japanese guy would come all the way to bumfuck Massachusetts just to bully some emo guy. Are his psychic powers intercontinental in nature? Could he sense evil shit happening from that far away? In either case, I made him my party leader at this point and I don't regret it at all. If we sail near the top of the 3rd floor, we'll discover a small shack with 1 resident. An old lake witch that poses no harm to us. Of course her shack still has random battles. The leftmost area is a prison, housing an NPC in a graveyard with 1 open grave. I think this is where we'd have buried the oarsman if the game hadn't pulled some Bethesda shit on me. Here's where the fast talk skill also comes in handy. You can visit this strange zoo at the bottom of the map, and if your skill is high enough you can actually hear what the captured animals are saying. 1 passageway on the 4th floor was made invisible. It's only for King Laplace and anyone else who used it never returned. Here's what the Wolfman says. Do you know a wizard named Moldiv? He turned me into this. Oh, thank God I killed him. Princess Cassandra is in the jail cell. The cell is guarded by a fierce creature that uses strange powers. If you'll recall, Princess Cassandra is the girl Bayard is meant to take care of. There is a white horse with a horn growing out of its forehead. A unicorn. I start to smile when I see it, and it approaches me. You are not people of this world. Leave quickly before you lose your lives. I was made to help kill a king named Laplace. Benedict, my master, and a wizard from the Undercroft used me in their schemes. When their plans failed, Benedict went somewhere and I came here. I hear somewhere on the 4th floor there's an elder sign that passes through to the world where the demon of Laplace hides. Okay, cool, we're actually getting close. Let's see who else is there. Oh shit, a frogman? I just want to warn you that the river to the west is the actual river Styx. Do not swim in it. You will die. From my research, I figured out that this guy's name is Sayex, and he's an actual party member you can recruit for some time. I have no idea how you manage that, but there you go. Lastly, we can visit this tiny island top left of the map. And hey, look who finally showed up. Princess Cassandra. She mentions feeling faint, and our main character grabs her hand, but oh shit, Kenichiro has her figured out. This isn't Cassandra at all. It's a succubus, mercifully sparing us from having to touch a girl's hand. There's a trick door that leads to a back room holding the real Cassandra. She tells us to run away and that her father Laplace has gone mad and will kill us if he finds us. The princess is finally reunited with her loyal knight, and the both of them leave to the Lake Witch's house. Let's go pay them a visit. I knew you'd come. I have a favor to ask of you if you'd but listen. Please, you must rescue my father. He may rule this world as emperor, but that's only because he used Laplace's demon to see into the future and created an attack plan that couldn't fail. But the status and honor he acquired are empty because they weren't earned. My father knows this, but even so he is using the demon still to secure the reign of his imperial throne. And so the demon's power has warped this world. Without its power, this world will vanish. My father is to blame for all of this, but it's not too late. I want you to talk with my father and have him break his infernal pact with the demon. She goes on to explain that the demon cannot account for people who aren't from this reality. Kenichiro, Benedict, and our party are all massive blind spots for Laplace, which is why he's terrified of us, and plans to invade and conquer our reality by using Benedict's elder sign as a portal. She says her father is on the 4th floor. There's some kind of gauntlet we have to pass through to reach his chambers. Sailing to the bottom right puts us on yet another prison island, this one much more eventful than the last. There's this undying skeleton knight, and the only way to put him down for good is with the Orthodox Chalice. We can use his remains to unlock the rooms here. The first one has a staircase leading to the 4th floor finally. In the second one, a man is crouched in the corner of the gloomy cell. It's Benedict Ruthertop. There you are, Benedict. Abandon your fool's errand and return to Newcomb, or risk even further tragedy. And yes, this is the same guy from the intro. The world spares no one apparently. Benedict expresses shock at Kenichiro's revival. Surprisingly, he accepts to go back with us. At the hospital, he gives us an emerald effigy, which he says will lead us to Laplace. Let's do that, shall we? The 4th floor is pretty small and linear. We're near the end of the game at this point. Right near the center, there's a door that unlocks with the emerald effigy. Behind it, there are 2 of Laplace's personal servants, while a stone sentry blocks the path to the man himself. The seamstress explains that the demon has no concept of good and evil, and just mindlessly serves its master once a pact is formed. Master Laplace fears that Benedict may be able to control the demon as well. Laplace believed the world and all in it was made of math and thus measurable. He also felt he has played an important role in all of this, to know and control the calculations of the world that others cannot. As Cassandra said, we have the choice of 2 arenas to pass through. One is a test of strength and the other a test of wisdom, so just a quiz pretty much. I've had enough of this game's combat to last 3 lifetimes, so I picked the quiz. More bootleg Earthbound music starts playing as we go through these rooms, being asked questions in every one of them. What is the name of the man whose magic aided in the summoning of the demon? That's Moldiv. The second riddle asks you the name of Laplace's daughter, just in case you hit your head and forgot the last 20 minutes, I guess. The third riddle asks you the name of Cassandra's loyal knight. This is just silly now. The fourth riddle asks you Laplace's first name. This one is actually interesting because his name is not mentioned anywhere in the game. It expects you to know about its inspirations. It's Pierre. The fifth riddle asks us for the name of a powerful stone giant animated by the power of magic, really throwing the Japanese tabletop nerds a bone with that one. It's the Golem. The sixth riddle, what practice in alchemy is said to transmute lead into gold? Chrysopoeia, Chrysalis, and Chrono Trigger. I don't know if that reference was added by the fan translators or already in the original game, but it's not the right one either way. It's Chrysopoeia. The seventh and final riddle asks us the meaning of the Tower card used in reading the tarot. It's destruction. I know this because I've played a video game from Asia before. Finally, we are granted audience with King Laplace. What awaits us in the throne room is not a proud ruler, but a sad, tired old man, driven half insane by forces beyond his control. Despite this, he still proposes a final duel between us. If we win, we can seal the Elder Sign of Weathertop Hall and save the world. If we lose, our souls will become a sacrifice for the demon, allowing its powers to extend to our reality. Let's do it. There is no future for this world, no free will. All outcomes are known and predicted by Laplace's demon. Things only happen by my will and mine alone. I sought a perfect world, but what I found was boring and sterile, devoid of novelty. But I can start anew. This time I will create perfection. Unfortunately for him, this is just elder abuse now. I'm defeated. Laplace's demon could not foretell the victor. For the first time, I have found something the perfect demon could not divine. We inform him of Cassandra's wish, but he insists he has total control over the demon and that this world can't even exist without its power. The Elder Sign is closed and he sits back down in his chair to take a nap. There's a little side room in the 4th floor we need to check out. This is the sacrifice room used in Master Laplace's ceremonies. Alright, thank you. Inside the room we find a crying young girl. It's Amy. Remember her? Let's take her back home before some Tom Hanks shit goes down. Everyone in town is freaking out for some reason. Kusakabe, I hear Benedict escaped. A wizard or something attacked the police when they tried to get him back. Yeah, he looked like a wizard, alright. And this fairy tale guy in black carries him off. Yes, an evil wizard broke Benedict out of the hospital and had a gunfight with police officers before heading back into Weathertop Hall with him. That's not a joke, it really happened. Anyway, we finally drop Amy off with her mom and all these shit-faced townspeople grumbling about gargoyles and demons. Our reward is $1,200 and 5,000 experience. Yeah, fuck you, Alec. The grocery store owner knows the game is ending soon, so he decides to give us the ultimate weapons. A 12-gauge shotgun and what I imagine is probably a Tommy gun. This is the game's equivalent of Omnislash. The minute we show up at the castle again, we get immediately jumped by 4 different guards. After a very anticlimactic fight, we receive a surprise visit from none other than Adolf, the senile magi abandoned in the basement like 2 hours ago. Turns out Benedict's little coup attempt has thrown everything into chaos. This forced transfer of power is causing reality to unravel and the castle to fall apart. Thankfully, Bayard is still okay, and he tells us that Benedict is probably hiding beneath the castle, whatever that means. The Elder Signs don't work anymore, so we have to walk our way back up the 4th floor. Fair enough. We head up to the Lake Witch's house on the 3rd floor, but this Peter Pan-looking motherfucker blocks our path. His name is Jambon, and the game acts as if I know who he is, but I've never seen him before. He lets us go inside and talk to the witch. She's converted her house into a shop and inn, which is very convenient for us. Jambon's shop features just about every item in the game, so we can restock our party and buy some equipment for the end. We can also sell Morgan's photos to him and read through the library's files. Cassandra informs us that Laplace is scared shitless of Benedict's return, and once again wants to try getting him to relinquish control of the demon. She even writes a nice letter for him. We go up to the 4th floor, and it's the same as before, save for a few extra guard fights. Unfortunately, the way to Laplace's chambers are now blocked off by the same stone gargoyle from earlier. He kicks us out as this is a path only the king can use. Without any other options, we head back down to the 3rd floor, but something stops us halfway through. It's Benedict and the cop-killer dark wizard Louvain. Louvain was mentioned earlier as plotting to take the demon's power from Laplace and convincing Benedict to help him accomplish his goal. Now they're hoping to use the current chaos to their advantage, and once again Zerp is thrown. He explains his evil plan while cackling maniacally, which prompts a shocked response from my character. Dear God, man, why? Louvain mentions that our situation is hopeless, as the Elder Signs are broken and there's no way for us to return home. We can make a choice. Go back to Newcomb using his powers, or stay here and fight. I'm sure the leave option results in some amusing bad ending, but I chose to stay. The resulting boss fight with Louvain is rather problematic, as none of our attacks appear to hit him. I tried to figure something out to no avail, when, out of nowhere, Sir Bayard stabs through Louvain with his holy sword, causing 99 points of damage. The wizard is momentarily incapacitated, and Bayard tells us to run away and keep the princess safe in his stead. We lament his sacrifice and apologize to him before running off to get Cassandra. A knight to the end, she remarks, and so we take her back to the wizardless 4th floor to see what she can do for us. As she is part of the king's lineage, the gargoyle can't help but obey her commands. The path is now clear. Time for an intervention. Hear me out, we just want to save you, father. Save me? I don't need saving. Laplace's demon is too much for you to handle. Yeah, no fucking kidding. It will consume you and this world before long, relinquish its power. Surprisingly, this actually gets Grandpa to admit his own powerlessness. He's pretty much resigned himself to rotting away in his artificial kingdom, and then Benedict interrupts the struggle session by teleporting behind him and waving around some magical artifact that takes away all his powers. Now that your supernatural powers have been frozen out, you're just another man. Just another man whose fate is to freeze to death inside my icy nebula. But my power... You know, I kind of thought this was going to be a horror game. Cassandra tries to explain that the demon's powers cannot be controlled and only destroy all who seek to wield it, but then Benedict is like, nah bitch, and kidnaps her to conduct another ceremony. The dying king now watches as his own daughter becomes a sacrifice to the demon, like so many other innocents slain by his order. With his dying breath, he pleads with us to save Cassandra and stop Benedict from causing yet another disaster. Once again, he curses himself for trying to create a perfect future untethered from causality. He then tells us the truth about Louvain. He's not even a living creature so much as a physical manifestation of Laplace's desire to conquer and dominate, born to carry out his duty even as the king grew weary and afraid. We take his crown and ring, which according to him will reveal the palace's secrets and allow us to put an end to Louvain once and for all. I wanted to build a perfect future, but now I have no future at all. Laplace's life faded away. Something strange has appeared on the 4th floor, a crack in the wall near the center. We walk down what might as well be an RPG Maker map I made 10 years ago, and into the ceremony grounds. Cassandra is unconscious, as Benedict readies a dagger and chants a spell, intending to sacrifice the princess to open a gate into the demon's world. But before we can do anything, he plunges the dagger into Cassandra's chest, and the rift opens, swallowing the both of them. We recover Cassandra's bracelet from the rubble and jump in ourselves. Welcome to the game's final area, a dark purple abyss only inhabited by these very cool looking wendigos. We have to blindly make our way to the cave at the top, which isn't very difficult. Of course, Louvain is waiting for us when we get there. He then reveals his true plan, which involves sacrificing Benedict to the demon. As he comes from our reality, his sacrifice will give the demon the power to cross over to our world. He tries to fight us again here, but flashing Laplace's ring will cause him to panic and morph into his true form, of a bat-winged Bishonen chimera. This is one of the tougher fights in the game, and Louvain can hurt you pretty good, but it's still no problem, so long as you prepare and bring some strong equipment. Within the cave, we come across Benedict. Before him is a giant slithering shadow. In its center floats a giant eye, one that seems to be seeing everything. Kenichiro tries to explain that Benedict is nothing more than a pawn in all of this, but we're once again too late, and he gets folded like a pretzel by the demon, who then destroys reality again. We're stuck in a rift between dimensions. The power of Cassandra's bracelet being the only thing keeping us from insta-giving, the demon floats along with us as it tries to breach our reality, using Benedict's spirit as a beacon. Kenichiro spots one single elder sign in the void and hatches a plan. We'll go through it and then destroy it from the outside to trap the demon within the rift. Hey, it's the final boss, and oh my god, they actually bothered to make a proper final battle theme. Every other battle in this entire game has the exact same song playing, and it was driving me crazy. I was genuinely happy to hear it, and it's a great song too. The demon is easily the coolest fight in the entire game. I love the concept of you just racing into the Elder Sign and trying to beat him back to buy you some time. He's got some pretty hefty attacks that have a big chance of inflicting confusion. My silver bullets continue to cause almost 100 damage every turn. Me and Kenichiro are on attack duty, while Lamont heals the party. Morgan takes a bunch of pictures and then dies. Don't worry, we'll put them to good use. Kenichiro spends the majority of the fight confused and attacking himself, but also dodging himself, so he's not really doing anything. He snaps out of it just in time to use his special attack and put an end to all of this. That day, an earthquake tore through the very center of Newcomb. Nightmares still lingered among some, but no worse. Laplace's demon never made it into our world. I went back to Weathertop Hall the next day, but the elder signs had vanished. Now, the memories of those events feel like half-forgotten dreams. We still remember everything, though. From Benedict to Cassandra to the king and his castle, and all the lives that were lost. Yes, including the Frogman. Despite all the destruction and loss, Newcomb is slowly coming back to life and moving forward. It's all in the past now, and the future is still very much uncertain. But we conclude that may not be such a bad thing after all. Our work done, we decide to finally leave the town and say our goodbyes to Kenichiro, who chose to stay and watch over Newcomb. He says there are so many evils lurking in the world, and wonders if we might face them together again one day. Alright, there we go. I hope that wasn't too confusing. I've never done this kind of story time review before, but I think this game fits pretty well with that. Despite my many gripes, I did enjoy this game quite a lot. It's like a Call of Cthulhu tabletop session with a slightly dickish DM. It also feels like something that would be released by a solo dev on Wolf RPG like 2 years later. I'd say it succeeds fairly well at almost everything it tries to do, but trying to judge it by itself seems kind of pointless. This game is best understood as the final evolution of a creative lineage, from tabletop to PC dungeon crawlers to a JRPG. There's something very rewarding about being able to see this game's building blocks in its earlier versions. How they tried different things within the same format while still keeping a strong core identity that was iterated upon for 8 years. That's what I find really wonderful about it. And speaking of which, I did say there were 2 other video games in the Ghost Hunter series aside from Laplace. One was the goofy 3DO game I showed you earlier, and the second one is this, Paracelsus Namaken, released in 1994 for the PC-98. Once again developed by Hummingbird and written by Yasuda. That's right, another dungeon crawler, and this one is an honest-to-God sequel to Laplace's Demon. It takes place in 1931, 6 years after the first game. Oh. Sorry about that. Anyway, we open with this recap of what happened in the previous game that features some gorgeous art. Morgan is now a very successful novelist thanks to the book she wrote concerning her experiences at Weathertop Hall. We receive a letter from her inviting us to some fancy party in London. We meet up with her once again, along with Alec and Vincent. We also meet a new character named Franca, and everything seems to be going fine until she has a hallucination where Europe is destroyed by a series of disasters that play over the intro credits. After this, we are approached by a mysterious man that asks us to track down a missing British occult researcher, and things open up from there. You know the drill. Rest at the hotel, search for clues in the town, head into spooky haunted places and fight stupid looking enemies. I'm in love with the way this game looks. The pixel art looks far more detailed and stylish than their past work. This game obviously deserves its own review, and I'm honestly ashamed that I can't make one due to my dickinai. It's pretty damn hard to fully appreciate Japanese games when you don't know the language. Still, I couldn't possibly end this video without bringing this to your attention. It's the most well-realized form of the dungeon crawler style, released 1 year before the sudden turn to console development. Laplace's Demon on the Super Famicom was the last game Hummingbird Soft would release before shutting down. They were in business for 11 years, and almost all their games were hardcore enthusiast PC games, catering to a niche, mature audience. It's strange to go back to a time where developers were actually allowed to hone their craft and naturally evolve with their games. The whole Ghost Hunter project, and its many spin-offs, is undoubtedly their masterpiece, and the symbol of a much healthier culture that is now long gone. It's a little sad they went away so quickly, but I can't say there was any wasted potential here. They had one thing, and they took that thing as far as they could possibly go before going out on top. Their work was done.